Aidy, what's the biggest difference between the American player and the players from Europe?
Okay, well, I'd say that the one thing obviously is the weather. You get a lot more chance to play out here all year round, whereas obviously the conditions in the UK and definitely some parts of Europe can produce hardier players, if you like. But at the same time, I think there's good and bad everywhere. And I think you get those guys that are hungry and have the desire in every country, and you get those guys that that just play for fun. And if you can get a mixture of the two, then you're in the right place.
Okay, what's it like to coach against the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Man United?
Well, it's tough. It's when you're thinking about your game plan to go and beat these guys, obviously the best place to start is probably a church because they're that good. But you're in there on merit, and you've got to hope that the Chelseas and the Uniteds and the Arsenals and Liverpools they're not at their best, and they take you for granted. And all your guys have got to be at 9 and 10, and then they've got to stick to the game plan, which don't concede early, and just make sure that you keep them a little bit worried about you. But it's a huge gap. The top 4 teams in the Premiership and the rest, and then the Championship teams. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But to play against those guys really gives you an insight, and the managers, about what playing at the very, very top is all about.
Aidy, what's your impression of the Surf Soccer Club and the level of its players compared to the youth players in England?
Okay, well I think first of all, I always say when I go into a club that youth players have got to have a chance depending on the manager, depending on the leader. And from what I've seen so far, the leader, which is obviously you have a fantastic group of people around you. And that's, to me, is good management and good leadership. And then to get them all kicking in the right direction, in the same direction, is also important. And you can see that you're doing that as well. So, I can't find, if the question is for me to find fault with you, I can't, because I think it's fantastic what you're doing here. I love the level of the commitment, I love the level of the coaches, the way that you interact with them, the way that you get the players working. It is absolutely brilliant. And it's not by accident that so many kids get through to colleges. That's your aim, and that's what they do, and it's down to you and your staff and the application of the players. So I've been very, very impressed. First and foremost, this is my first time at any US organisation, and I've been very, very impressed.
Thank you. Aidy, what advice would you give to any of the elite American player who wants to pursue a career in Europe?
Well, I would say to any players, practice, practice, practice. But practice makes permanent, so it's important to do the right things, and it's important to test yourself against the best. And if you make mistakes, it's all part of learning, and you've got to make mistakes in order to know what to do differently next time. And I always say, to any player, I don't mind you making mistakes, but don't make the same one twice. Make a different one, and then you should be developing and growing and getting better as a player.
Fantastic. Aidy, do you have a funny story for us from your EPL?
Well, I think one of the it wasn't funny at the time, but when we played Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, we had a guy called Danny Shitu, who was a big Nigerian centre half. I think he's captain of his country now, and he said in one of the papers, The Sun, I'm going to give Didier Drogba something he's never had before, and it was plastered all over the newspapers, and I thought, oh dear. The last thing you want to do is goad one of the best teams in the world that haven't lost at home in something like 70 games. But he did anyway, he said it in the paper, and he was right. He gave him something that he'd never done before, because he scored 3 goals and we lost 4-0. So although it wasn't funny at the time, it certainly is looking back now.
Cool. Thanks, Aidy.
My pleasure.
Awesome.